I was just going to roll up in a bear soup, smoking a mopacho, which is just like Peruvian organic tobacco. That was my plan. Yeah. Then I was like telling Freeman, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to walk out. There's like, he like saw the bear suit and he's just like, what are you doing? And I'm like, told him, told my plan. And I thought maybe he was going to kind of like shame me and hate on me because that's his love language. But then he was just like, all right, I'm going to crawl out and you're going to slit my throat. I'm like, yes, yes.
What is up, ladies and gents? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Rafa Esparza, coming to you with another great installment of the Grappling Hour. We have an excellent guest. My man over here, he doesn't know he's on. He's looking at that. Look at this. Now he's posing. But see, he's got his boy Oliver here, who has been ready to get his shine. So we'll get to him in a second. But before we get back to our guest, who is a beast and who we are very excited to talk to, a few quick reminders. First and foremost, if you like the show, and I hope that you do, check us out on our Patreon. So that's patreon.com/grappling hour. What do you get if you go to patreon.com? Very easy. You get to see our interviews 30 days before anybody else for just $5 a month. And for a few extra dollars, you can see extra bonus content, including something that we're going to do here, which is called Tape Study, where we watch a match or a fight or anything that an athlete did with the athlete, and we ask them questions as to how they were able to do their badassery. So that's part of our premium subscription. We also do a segment called Roast Raf, where people roast my competition footage. Strangely, it is the most popular segment on the show for whatever reason. Couldn't imagine why. So you guys can check that out, patreon.com/grappling hour. You can also like, comment, and subscribe. Now, if you don't know what you want to comment on in the comment section, it helps us. I do appreciate it. By the end of this video, we will give you something to comment on. So don't worry, we will definitely not be short on topics for that. And of course, find us on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the major places. And you can also find us on our Discord. Let's get to our guest. Well, this young man definitely impressed me over at Subversiv, which you may be seeing this after the fact. It just happened for us about a week ago. It was impressive from start to finish. And I mean, from the beginning of the press conference, splashes of personality, seemed like a sweet dude, seemed like the nicest guy, put out a great walkout for us, and then went into, oh, no, our guy's dangerous too. Because when I saw him get out there, he made quick work of his opponent and caught the attention of all of us in the Subversiv production team. So it made me wonder, what is this guy like? Like, who puts on a bear costume? Who is that soul? What is he like when he goes back home? Because to us, he was a welcome member of the Subversiv team. But to many of you, he's also a wrestler, an incredibly wonderful human being that I got to talk to a little bit outside of the realm of the production. So I'm excited to talk for the very first time to one, Jared Fekete. Jared, how are you doing, good sir?
What's up, brother? I'm doing great.
You look so relaxed tonight. Just having the cat there, just having Oliver put you at ease. Is he almost like an emotional support cat here?
He's not. We have a sort of I wouldn't say, it's like a love-hate thing, Cat's never a cat guy growing up, but moved in with my buddy about a year ago, and he was left by an old ex-girlfriend, and he's just one of the bros now. And so it is nice to have my bro here for sure. But more of a dog guy. I got my Great Pyrenees over there.
Oh, very nice. See, I had the opposite. When I was young, my sister had a cat, which made me a cat dude. And then as I got older, I realized I had allergicness to cats. And I'm not allergic to a ton of things, But I remembered being like, come here, come here, chew. And then being like, I love cats. This sucks. So in order to be around them, you have to take the pills. You have to have the allergy medics. But then my wife grew up with dogs. So now I got 2 tiny dogs that are adorable, but also the worst.
Yeah. I think I got over my allergy of them because that was the case when I was young as well. It was like itchy eyes, and I would sneeze all the time. And then I was never around him all through college, all through the Marine Corps, and then moved in here, and he's been around. I'm like, I'm not allergic to him anymore. It must be all like the raw milk and raw honey fixing my immune system, the mushrooms and stuff.
I mean, listen, dude, whatever allows us to be around pets, because I think there's nothing worse than looking at a pet like, you didn't do this. Like, this is just my body having a shitty reaction. I feel I want you to be around. And man, there was nothing worse than trying to blame it on sickness back in the day when nobody cared about that stuff. I just remember being like, it's you. Oh, I'm sure I just have a cold. And they're like, well, the cold seems to recur every time you're here. And I go, I'm sure. Did I get sick again? I don't know. I love cat. It's fine.
I have a friend who's allergic to cold water. I'm just like, what? Like we went whitewater rafting at a wedding, bachelor party thing, and he was just like, poor guy, he's having a rough time. But we love him though. Shout out, Mike.
Could you imagine though, and no disrespect here, Mike, I don't want to pick on you too much, but cold water is a very interesting thing to describe to your homies. I am allergic to specifically cold water.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't tell you. I had no idea, but believe him. He had a rough time. He flipped over in the rapids and everything. He was not having. He toughed it out though.
Hey, and props to him for going, because I can't tell you how weird it is when my
He's
wife
one.
comes up. Go ahead.
He's one non-wrestler in a group of like 9 wrestler friends, and it's like, how did you get in this group, and like, why do you stick around? You're always like, I almost broke his face off with a water balloon launcher in college. Like, it's like, I'm so one guy like picking water balloon pieces out of his eye 2 days later. It's just like, bro, I love you. I'm so sorry. Did not. He's
It
such a bro.
sounds similar to most people's friend groups where you just kind of say like, hey, dude, you just get the short end of the stick here. I'm very sorry. This is just what it is. We're going to be roasting you and you're going to be there. But we love you. It's just, we're not going to stop going whitewater rafting.
I think it's like his big challenge, like the thing that keeps him growing.
I just laugh because my wife is allergic to fuzzy berries, so like strawberries, raspberries. So that means essentially I'm allergic to them because I don't want to like eat something. And she'll tell me, she's like, you can eat whatever you want. I go, I know I can, but do you know how bad I feel if I like give you a kiss afterwards? And then I start getting in my head like, oh shit. Do I need to get the thing? Do I need to get like a needle? Like, do I have to, like, what do I need to do? And she's like, it's not quite like that. I go, right, but I don't want you to break out just because I made a dumb error. So she will routinely see me during a dessert menu kind of lose my mind. Like, no, this affects you too. So I don't want to do any of this shit.
Good man, dude. That's solid. I'll do the
Try to
same
be,
thing.
bro. But I will admit freely, there are some strawberry sort of cheesecakes where I'm like, babe, I'm so sorry. You're on your own tonight.
Eat some strawberries.
So let's get to this, sir. How did you get involved with this Subversive? Because obviously, I know you have a friend. He's been involved in our events as well. But how do you find yourself in San Diego for this weekend's event?
I will credit that one, the majority of that, to Freeman, Denzel, who was in my corner, my teammate from the Marine Corps. So if I could pause for 1 second and let my dog in, because you should see her eyes right now. She's so sad.
Oh no, go do the thing. Go. Of course, we're going to give him a second to go get his affairs in order. But I love the fact that my man has the wherewithal to know, hey man, I need like literally, can we take like a quick pause here? So we resume with this story of how we got involved at Subversive right now.
You're the man. Yeah, Maeve is so Denzel and I have been tight for about, I would say, probably like 4 years now. I met him. I was going through officer candidate school as he was going through the basic school. So school number 1, school number 2. and I knew he was trying to get on the All Marine Wrestling team, and I had already kind of talked to some of the officers on the team, so I hit him up there, and we just kind of started a relationship, and then we just trained together. That was like, I was not the type of Marine that did anything outside of Marine Corps stuff. I had a wife, and so I went home and trained, and then did family stuff. So, it's just me and him training all the time. Like, we realized like 3 years into our relationship, we haven't hung out like outside of something that was training related. So, him and I went to ADXC2 in Abu Dhabi in January together. That was another invite from him and Knockout Reps, or in Hodek, our fight manager. So it was just like, he asked me if I had time. I was like, yeah, man, I'm coming with you. And so I just trained with him and coached him at ADXC, and then he got on the last Subversiv card, I believe, back in would have been this summer sometime. I think I was in Peru. But he talked me up, name dropped me to Mike, I believe, and Mike hit me up, and so I'm just having conversations with them. First, it was supposed to be Noah Chen was my match at 185, and then next thing you know, I got they dropped the poster of me and JT Money, and then I was just like, I had no idea who he was. I'm not a big fan of MMA, to be honest. Like, I like the sport. I like the art of it. I think I find it entertaining, but I don't get sucked into entertainment too much. So I just kind of didn't really know who he was, but other people did. And then I just asked him. I was like, "Hey, what's up with the switch up?" And it's just like, that seemed like a better matchup. And I was like, "Okay, here's that 205." Forgot it was at 205. I actually didn't know that until after the Las Vegas Open, which was funny because it was a thing at the time, because I also had a pretty fucked up rib. And then everything just kind of like came together, and just like everything felt right. It was nice to actually have them come to me, for a change, instead of me just going to all these tournaments and going to all these things. And it's just easy yes, because it came to agreement and everything.
So we have Freeman to thank for this, because, man, what a great poll. And you know what's great? This is why we always try to ask people who appear on our cards, like, well, who do you know? Because they're in the room with those other people, those hidden gems. And you 100% were a hidden gem, because I know you mentioned you didn't know a ton about JT to begin with, but he was somebody who had experience on The Ultimate Fighter. He has his own story of doing a lot of things and finding his way back to jiu-jitsu. And perhaps most notably for Subversiv, he had sold the most tickets, I believe. So like, he had a big party that was there, a big team that was there to support him on that day.
Yeah, I guarantee it. I have so much gratitude towards Jesse. And I did watch, like, as soon as I figured out who he was, I watched one video that kind of explained his whole UFC career. And that was really all I needed to watch, because after that, I followed him, and then I was just kind of saw that he was a dad and all these things he was doing. It just seemed like it just kept building up in my mind. Like, this is fucking cool. Like, this is awesome. So.
And, from my experiences with JT, he's always been very polite, very easy to work with. So he comes in as a professional, and I'm sure for you on the other side, that must feel really, really good. So obviously, we had done our research. We were told about you. I was stoked. And then I saw you during the press conference, and I have to be honest, as the guy who's running the stuff behind the scenes, there's always a moment where you go, I wonder how this person's going to appear. Now, you, true to form, because even on this interview, you were in the virtual room before I was there. I show up driving my car full of equipment, and I see this dude with like an army hat, if you would, kind of almost like a nice little outdoors hat. It's a what?
Marine Corps boonie.
Thank you. I didn't know the official term for it, but I was like, I just see you chilling outside, and I go, he's on our card, but I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting. But you could tell that you're just sitting there, and that you're, unlike most of our goons, not only on time, but super early, because you're there when I'm there. And I go, well, my man's all right.
To be there at 9. I'm like, fucking be there at 9. I'll probably be there at 8:55. Dude, I cut like 3 pounds before, and I was like, oh, I gotta get these 3 pounds off. But it's like, I was like, shit, I got 45 minutes. I like pushed my Uber back. I was like, threw on my sauna suit because I'm not normally 205. Normally I'm under it, but I came in heavy, like 208. I was like, damn, I'm cutting weight to 205. That's badass. But I didn't have a scale at my hotel room, so I just like had to go to a hotel down the down the street, and I was like, the whole thing. I'm like, fuck, I'm 3.5 pounds over, but I'm so hydrated, so I'm just like, all right, I got an hour, and so I threw that shit on. And I was just like, dude, I was stressing all morning. I don't understand how. At 11:15, I'm like, I'm such an idiot.
I mean, to be fair, the size fits you well because it looks like that's your natural weight. And even when I'm doing the research on you and I'm looking at your Instagram page, you just look stacked, bro. Like you look yoked. So you telling me like, I'm actually a little bit under, and I'm like, I don't know, bro. Some of these photos I see of you competing, you were competing at the big boy division, sir.
Yeah, and I'm like, I can drop water weight like it's nothing. It's the way my body holds water is so unique to me. And I've realized just being in this a long time that it's like a pretty awesome advantage because like I could like at practice yesterday it was just hot and it was just a good flowy practice. I took off 10 to 12 pounds like it was nothing. So I was almost to like 190. It's like it's this weird. I can like 185 was like I thought that was what my weight class was coming into this, and that's what I competed at Midwest Finishers in August and Las Vegas Open, and I got to be heavy. It was like 201 or something like that. But yeah, man. And then when I talked to Mike about it, and he's like, "No, man, no, you're at 205. Start getting big." I'm like, all right. But it kind of because I had a rib injury, pretty nasty. I couldn't roll hard without it being really freaking painful. So just nursed that for 3 weeks and put on weight, and I felt really good about it. Just like taught me a lot about what rest can do, and like just I was still training, but it was like really focused, on other things, stretching and just like core and then conditioning.
It is so difficult to budget that landing because you need good training, and most people equate good training with hard training. But if there's a certain goal, there's a way to fracture that even more. So did you feel okay going into that week of competition though? Because that's really
Yeah.
the toughest thing to nail.
Yeah, of course. I probably about 2.5 weeks out, I made the conscious decision that I was just going to rest and feel as good as I can when I get out there. So I like recommitted to doing it. I'm like, I had a really bad training session one day and it was really painful. I'm like, dude, I'm literally, I won't perform like this. I'm just like, it's too, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just too much. Sorry about the dings. I thought I let that go, but um, yeah, man. I don't know. It just kind of,
Hold on. I just want you to see the face because I have the headphones in. So what I think we'll do, I'm going to put a marker here so that I remember to mute those for the audience. But I just want the audience to see my face when that happened, because definitely I was prepared for it in some way, but because it's in the earpiece, I was like, oh, I got all of it. Okay.
Yeah, that's rough.
So don't worry about it. You're fine. Let me
Yeah,
let me
okay.
just say this though. I noticed though you didn't look that way. You looked good. You come on over, and all of my concerns or worries on how you're going to be, like, I see people when they do these press conferences. Sometimes they take on a persona. Sometimes they don't know how to be themselves. I got the impression when Tim was asking you questions, that was just like you, and I got a peer at your soul and like who you are. And what made me laugh and so entertained, aside from your casualness of you're not just doing jiu-jitsu, you're also adding the slap element to it. What made me so entertained was that you made sure to close on out with a shout out to protecting our bees and, to the idea that bees are an important part of our society. And I was like, who in a press conference where you can slap your opponent and most people shit talk each other or say, I've seen you in MMA. You weren't that good. Or let's see who becomes the victor tomorrow. You were like, yo, save the bees. And I thought, oh, my man's got personality. And I like that.
Yeah, man. That's That's just me. I don't know. I'm over here laughing at my dog crawling. Yeah, man. The whole thing is just like Sleeping Bear Farm, Sleeping Bear National Lakeshore, like bears, all the symbolism, bears, honey, like it just kind of, it's just, this just is.
Okay. Now, granted, there's no way I, a producer on the show, would know that the next day you're going to come in a bear costume. So my guy is shooting it, Michael Plaster, one of the best in the business, and he has a handheld cam. Now, the handheld cam is designed to get you to walk out and kind of go down a pathway, and it's supposed to make it feel like you're up close and personal. And a lot of times it's very, very beneficial when you're shooting combat jiu-jitsu action because you want to be as close as you can to the action. And in your case, some of your action took place all the way up front. Like literally the second you walked out, you and Denzel had choreography to the walkout. So do you mind walking us through, one, how you came up with the walkout, and two, maybe in case people didn't see it, kind of narrating what the thought process was for the walkout, sir?
I would be glad to. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna roll up in a bear soup, smoking a mopacho, which is just like Peruvian organic tobacco. Um, that was my plan. So, you know, just kind of everything touches home. Sleeping Bear Jiu-Jitsu, it's bears. It's just kind of fucking around. Like, yeah, it's fun and everything, but honestly, it was just, yeah, it just made sense. I was coming up to Fred Bear by Ted Nugent, which didn't play, but if anybody gets a shot, like listen to Fred Bear. I put the reel of the video to Fred Bear, and like just really cool song because it's Ted Nugent's from Michigan, and Fred Bear is this bear hunter and stuff like that. So it's a really cool song. Um, Shout out to my dad for showing it to me like a couple days before. I didn't even know anything about it, but it was just so perfect. And then yeah, then I was like telling Freeman, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna walk out. And he like saw the bear suit, and he's just like, what are you doing? And I'm like, told him told my plan, and I thought maybe he was gonna kind of like shame me and hate on me because that's his love language. But then he was just like, all right, I'm gonna crawl out, and you're gonna slit my throat. I'm like, yes, yes. I didn't know that you'd be a part of this, but it's everything in me like screams yes if like my people just want to be a part. So like I'm like I just build off of that energy. So he's like, all right, I'll crawl, and then kind of like we had to figure it out a little bit in the back room where like he couldn't put his hands through the costume because I wasn't going to be able to take it off of his big ass shoulders. So I was like, all right, listen, just put your fingers in the claws and then just rest it over you. And so I'll just come up behind you and slit your throat with a K-bar, and then I'll take it. And it worked out perfectly. And then my buddy Mark, who I went to Peru with this summer, had a couple friends from that trip come and support. I was like, hey, just try to get the walk out and just catch it. And he caught it perfectly. I was just like so happy. Showed it, like put it in our group chat and everything. It was just like cool. The memory is solidified. It's sick.
I mean, it was impressive. I was a little sad we didn't catch it better on our side. And again, surprise to me, but fortunately your buddy caught it. So I'm glad you took care of that. Shows good producing on your side. I guess, did you have a plan if Denzel was going to say, nah, man, I'm not doing any part of this?
I didn't ask him. No, I was not expecting him to play a part, but it does make sense now looking back. No, I didn't even start talking. I mean, like we keep in touch all the time, but it's like I didn't talk to him until like the day he got in, and he's like, "Are you here?" I'm like, "Yeah." Cool. I'm supposed to stay with him, but then I ended up staying in another place, and actually my girl was in town. But it was just like, yeah, we just hung out in the after party and everything like that. It's just something about him and I, like just doing silly things and good things happen. So keeping it up.
I'm just, as a person who's a notorious planner, I can't help but think like, I don't know if somebody's going to go with this. And listen, dude, I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. I like when people go the extra mile for their entrances. I like when people do the showmanship, because here's the thing. You walking out doesn't have to come at the expense of your opponent. So all the creativity you come up with there is just an additive. It's just something to keep the eyeballs on people and stand out when there's 24 other matches that are happening, so that people go like, that bear costume guy, that's my dude. So
It's,
it definitely is one way of keeping the attention.
there's even more to it in the sense, when I moved in with my roommate Sean, went to high school with him, and he was best friends with my brother and in his friends group, and then I came back to the area. My brother passed away in 2014, and so we kind of like bond over that. Like we became like pretty much best friends. This last couple of year, teaching him jujitsu, and has a successful company and everything. And so hanging out a lot with him, and building a relationship with him, bro. And like he has this bear suit from 12 years ago when he used to party with my brother at another place that they were at in town. And this bear is like, he's like, be careful, dude. You might get AIDS or STD or something like that. He's like, just be careful putting that on. It's so funny because it's such a cool bear suit. It's very similar, but it's a grizzly bear. And the claws are missing on one hand. And like, you can only imagine like what they were pulling out of those claws. But it's like, it's just like, I, I don't know. I was living it with him for like 4 months before I found it in the closet. I'm like, dude, how have you not showed me this yet? And he's like, oh yeah, be careful putting that on. But like, yeah, that thing's, infamous. And so I just like busted it out and like made it more seen. And then I was like, I got to get my own. And then I got a black bear. So it really was the main motivation. Then I was like, I should wear that in the walkout. And you guys talk about walkout bonus or whatever. I was just like, that makes sense. I'll do that.
What an incredible tribute to your brother, and my condolences, sir. But what a great way to continue paying tribute, and a very subtle way of doing it too. So it's one that is entertaining and is kind of fun and has a light element. But the fact that it has those hidden meanings as well, that makes it tighter between you and your friends and your family. So I know that's got to be an extra little step that makes it exceptional, especially, and correct me if I'm wrong, was this the older brother that you have?
Yes, he was 3 years older than me. Yep.
So this was also a guy who I believe, and I've done some research, he was the one who was instrumental in getting you involved in wrestling, correct?
Yeah. My brother was kind of paving the way for me, and my dad got us both into it. Yep.
So see, very smart, very cool of you, and just an additional touch. So maybe one that maybe people didn't know offhand, but a very cool and subtle thing. Let's get to the actual match in itself, because it's one thing to say you're going to be going up against JT, and it doesn't sound like you're doing any tape study. You had one match that was representative of, I know what he's about. I have an idea of what kind of game he's going to bring. So if that's the case, what were your expectations, and how did the match either match those expectations or deviate from what it is that you were able to see out on September 8th?
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I didn't really do a whole lot of studying. I was curious and like finding something on him with combat jiu-jitsu, and my coach Torin Heffelfinger, black belt out of 313 up here in Traverse City. He's been coaching me since I was in high school for high school wrestling. So I just like really flow really well underneath him, and we just communicate very similarly. And it was just one practice where he was like, yeah, no, I found him. I watched him maybe a few weeks ago. I found two of his CJJ matches, Eddie Bravo, but they were like from 2018. So it's like putting myself back in 2018. I'm like, okay, I was getting ready for going to the Marine Corps, and so I'm like watching him. I'm like, yeah, okay, kind of like eased my nerves a little bit of like what combat jiu-jitsu was, because like I hadn't really watched a whole lot. I really did feel like people were going to be throwing hands. Honestly, like I was throwing the hands. Like I thought I could knock them out. I didn't really understand. Like I don't. I mean, you don't slap people, and you don't hit people with your palms like full force every day. And yeah, man, I feel like seeing those two matches on UFC Fight Pass was helpful. But I still knew that this dude was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I know that he's been training most days for the majority of his life. So it's just like had a lot of respect for him, and definitely wasn't taking him easy by any means.
Of course you did. And, we're going to get into the specifics of the match in a separate segment. But overall, what did you take away from that experience? Because, you did mention combat jiu-jitsu is a little bit more of a heightened version of jiu-jitsu, but you yourself have experience with MMA and training in that way. But for you, what was the overall takeaway from this experience? And one last little additive on that. Was this your first time doing a combat jiu-jitsu match?
Yes, first time doing a combat jiu-jitsu match. Honestly, first time I've thrown a full force slap. So I just like I've been looking for the entrances into it. So I feel like I have a better idea of how to conserve energy for the positions that can actually be effective. Like it definitely took that away. I think for me, I play a very like a lot of people like to be open guard, and so like I feel like I'm just like heavy top, and so I just have kind of um, I learned where some of the positions were, I guess is probably the best way to say it, but also just on like a personal mental level, coming into a match with somebody who's has so much esteem, but also knowing like the miles that they put on their body, and like mentality is kind of everything. So I just was going to kind of sense the energy when I got, to the event. And, you're right, JT was like a super cool guy and everything, but I maybe kind of sensed that, his heart wasn't in it as much as maybe I thought it might be. And I do feel like I took advantage of just like having, maybe a little more rest under my belt, little less years and mileage under my belt and everything. So, on that side of things, I took advantage of just like the mental side of things, just kind of putting the pressure on him early and making him quit really early.
No, you were super impressive, and I was, like I said, look down for a half second. You were throwing those strikes, and you did it so beautifully to open him up, and then it kind of put him on the defensive in a way that was really hard to come back from. And then as a result of it, once you got your finish, it was just like, well, let me tell you two things. One, as an audience member, obviously we all want finishes in jiu-jitsu, but as a producer, oh, you were my favorite person right then, because you give me time back on a clock. Like when I'm looking to see daylight and I'm looking to see when we can strike this thing, I'm like, everybody who gets a submission is my friend. Everybody who goes to decision, not my friend. So you came through pretty clutch for me at a moment where I go, oh. All right,
Dude.
move on to the next match. We don't got time. Don't let this kid have too much time. Go on. Go. He already had his walkout. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling people, I'm like, this is good news for us.
Yeah. I like that.
So what did the win feel like for you? Because you're somebody with a lot of different experiences, and we'll get into those experiences in a few seconds. But, you're somebody who's wrestled a bunch. You're somebody who has represented us in wrestling, in the military. That's really, really cool. For us, there's so many different cool experiences that you've had in competition. But what did this one, especially being your first combat jiu-jitsu match, what did it feel like to pull away a win in this particular venue?
Yeah, it feels very much I guess the first thing I would say is like how I know confidence builds, to have like a stage and know that it's just not it's just something that you get to be grateful for. And honestly, like the win is just getting there, showing up, being a part of it, and like not being focused on the outcome. Like you get attached to any one outcome, and that's when I think like the fear sets in of like you got to be like over manipulate and controlling about everything in your environment. Whereas like when I know that just showing up and being there with the people that are there to support me and just being like present in it all, then good things happen. And I felt like because I did that in an event like Subversiv, where it's one match, high stakes, or at least like high risk, high reward, like opponent, and then also just like very new in that it was combat jiu-jitsu, so that was a new aspect of it. Also coming off kind of like an injury, scared, just like whatever, and all sorts of new things, and it's just confidence gets built by what you do and the work you put in. So it felt like more work to me. It's like when I'm in that environment, I'm there for a weekend. It's nice because it feels like work, and it's like a work of passion, just like being there. So like the networking of it all and everything. So I think, yeah, I think just knowing that there were so many wins on the table, just being in that environment and being present and just having the experience and like practice reps at, I've never done a press conference, stuff like that. It's just like these are new elements of it. This is a new element. It's like now I get to develop, my voice and like what I'm about and like promote things and, just like build closer camaraderie, build a closer team, like a stronger team. Because like what it's done for my team and the people around me and like strengthening us and building us up like towards what we're going after is like, it's the stuff you don't see. It's the wins after. It's everything. So it's like I was unattached to that outcome. It's like going there is a good thing, and then it just kind of like just so happens to be my time to have a really good performance, and I'm just gonna try to do everything I can with it. And so, um, yeah. And the question is like, how do I feel? Right? Like that's kind of
No, you answered it. It's just I know you're trying to answer it in full, and you did a good job on that. Part of the reason why I wanted to know that setup is because, and I apologize if I am bringing this up, and you don't need to talk about it if you do, but I did see that you were given some very unfortunate news kind of around this event. And I was just
yeah.
curious, when did you know that news, and did it affect you in the build up to it, or were you able to process it at any point? Because I know when I do stuff, there are moments where somebody might tell me something very important or something that would alter my performance. And it's almost like you have to be numb for a certain amount of time to get a certain kind of performance out. So where were you at
Yeah.
mentally when you received some news over the weekend, sir?
Yeah, it got compartmentalized a little bit. Anything dealing with loss and death, it's just a process people have to go through kind of continually, whether it's shedding versions of yourself or actually physically losing people in your life. And so I've lost people really close to me, and this specific individual, it just kind of touches me because I spent a week at a jiu-jitsu retreat in Tulum last October with a group called Becoming Om. Really good people, David and Cordy. That's actually who I went to Peru with this last summer, and did ayahuasca with, and they just do so much work for veterans and PTSD, and sort of an alternative approach to the Western medical sort of pharmaceutical grossness, I guess. I don't know. It's just like an alternative way, right? And so went there, and we do sweat lodges, and we just kind of reset and all that stuff. And so we got really close as a group. There's about 8 or 9 of us, and doing jujitsu and microdosing mushrooms and just having a really good experience of just resetting. And it was a really good thing for everyone. I got the news as I was in the Uber on the way over from Seb, the black belt, Seb Lavoy, who's another 20-year LE, like high level guy. And he was like the leader of the jiu-jitsu at the camp, and just been a really awesome mentor for me. And so he hit me up. He's like, hey, check the group chat on WhatsApp. And so I did. And then he explained that it had been circulating, that Danny had taken her life. And, it's just one of those things. It's just a common, people know about veteran suicide. People know about PTSD. People know about it. And I'm just in such a fortunate position in my life to not have had to deal with a lot of that, I guess, when it comes to combat trauma and everything. And then there's even, I have my own forms of trauma, but everybody is unique. And you just can't really know what other people are going through unless they are willing to talk about it. And then if people are willing to talk about it, you have to have other people who are willing to receive it and, show care. So it is like a timing thing. And so, it's just, I don't know, it's just interesting to think about. And she just kind of represents like a type of person that I knew while I was in the Marine Corps as well. People have been in for 15, 16, 17 years, and I could just see on their faces what it's done to them, what it was doing to them. I was 3 years in, and I was about to get out, and I did 4 years and I got out. I was a first lieutenant when I got out, and I'm technically in active reserve as a captain select, but I don't have any responsibilities unless I get called back for World War III. But it's just one of those things. Like, I did it. I went through the military. I'm a Marine, and so I guess I know how much influence I can have in that area, and it's just kind of surreal to have it happened so close to the fight. And I know she would have been watching and supporting. She supported my sleeping bear jiu-jitsu rash guards, my free bear hug rash guards. You might have saw Freeman wearing it around the rules meeting time when we were just kind of dicking off on the mat and stuff. So like I have these rash guards that she was one of the first people to support it, and it just definitely compartmentalized on the way over. But I told them that it's like, okay, well, this is going in it with, I'm going into the match with it, and so I'll do my best to represent. And it's all love, and it was her time, and it's just hard, to watch now the people that I went to that group with sort of work through, the process it, but that's why we have the group, and so we'll sort of process it from here and learn from it, and just honor her, and I just feel for her family, so I've been through it. I've been through death, really close death, so it's rough.
Well, I thank you for sharing, man, and I hope that at least the competition side brought you some release. I think that is one of the few things that you do get as a competitor when you've experienced loss. Anybody who's gone through it knows that there is a physical aspect of this sport that does help with part of that grief. Doesn't cure it, doesn't do anything. It's no magical thing that happens. But I know for a lot of athletes, being able to put on a good performance is good, but sometimes even just the act of getting out there and competing allows some kind of thing for something you can't do anything about in that moment. So that's what I was hoping for you. Of course, I didn't know any of that until I saw you put up a post about it. And I knew at the very least I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about it, because it is so difficult to bring it up in normal conversation without having people kind of understand, like, this is a real thing. Like, matches come and go, but these things are lasting. So your honesty is incredibly appreciated. So thank you so much for that, sir.
For sure.
So
Absolutely.
Let's move a little bit here to where I kind of wanted to transition to, because I was intrigued, obviously, by your story, and you've alluded to it a little bit here. But before we even get to you being any part of the military, I wanted to get into where you started wrestling, because, my man, you aren't old, but your wrestling soul is probably about 90 years old. So where did wrestling start for you, sir?
Bro, this is my favorite story. Cool. Yeah, so Benzie Central Wrestling is where I started. It's a small school, west coast of Michigan, on Lake Michigan, the county is. And we're Division 4, our smallest division. And it's just not, heavily populated area. So you don't get the opportunities that you get down near Grand Rapids or the South, or Detroit in the South Michigan area. But we weren't so far into the Upper Peninsula that we were like fucking Canada. It's we had some access to society, Traverse City being close by, and we had some opportunities kind of around, but it wasn't, wasn't a lot. And then my dad got me into it. He was like kind of foundational in starting like the kids program and made friends. So kind of funny story. My dad was married my mom young, and they settled down in Benzie County. And then my dad starts working at the high school as a custodian. And he, like 20 years old, 21 years old, he's a custodian at the high school. And then he starts wrestling with the wrestlers. And so he probably just did get a workout and then try to get into coaching and stuff like that. But he stayed for 20 years. He coached me all the way through my senior year, and was just always around the program. And so, they just built up the high school, but we were never very successful. We had a couple good teams over the 20 years, but it was the people who stuck around, which were only like a handful of people, me being one, like the two coaches that are coaching right now. But they all have been touched and like affected in a positive way by my father, and then some other coaches like Dan Salyer's like his best bud, and they were head coach, assistant coach for quite a few years. And both of their, like my older brother, and then Dan's son were a great apart. And then so we were all on the same team when I was a freshman, and my brother was a senior, and then Nolan who's in the Coast Guard. He's an officer in the Coast Guard. He, was a junior, and then my dad, so coached all these people. One of them is Torin Heffelfinger, who I've already mentioned, who's a black belt up at Significant Strikes in Traverse City, and 313 black belt. He was coached by my dad in middle school, and he was one of these guys that he had success later on in high school, senior years, really successful, and went off to wrestle in college. And he was like the first guy to go wrestle Division III. He went to Manchester College. And Torin came back after he wrestled at Manchester and coached me while I was my junior year, which I really needed. He was kind of like a missing piece because I had a really successful freshman and sophomore year, qualified for state finals. I was up there with the best in the state in my division both years. But I couldn't break through to get onto the podium like all state. I was really close my sophomore year, really close. Just had a bad tournament. Bad match really. And then Torin comes in my junior year and just kind of like settles me down. Like I just am calm around him, So and then I had my best year, placed top 4 at state, and so Torin goes off my senior year, goes off to Brazil, gets his freaking brown belt. He stays there for like 3 years, like literally in Brazil for 3 years, just training. And I lost my senior year. I didn't get it. I tore my ACL playing football, and so I was like kind of solidified. Okay, I got to go to college and keep competing. I'm not done yet. It sucks. Like I was ranked number 1 in the state going in. The guy who won state that year, like in my mind, I had him beat, no problem, whatever, all this stuff. And so I went to college, went to Wheaton College, which is a whole story about how that came about. My head coach is the real reason why I stayed. Probably wouldn't have stayed otherwise because my brother passed away freshman year. It just got really, really tough, but it was the wrestling team that kind of like kept me drawn in. It's a really good group of dudes and a good coach. And he was a 2-time Olympian in Greco-Roman, coached at Northern Michigan University, where the Olympic Training Center is for the Greco team. And then went to Wheaton College. Had been there for a few years, and he was just building a program. So had a really good recruiting class my freshman year. Like 6 studs came in that year, and they all finished out with me. So we had a really good training group, and we all got a lot better in college. We were all in the NCAA qualifiers, all Americans, all this stuff. And then, I just kind of got lost a little bit after college because I got married and then to my high school sweetheart, and got into the real world. And then for like 2 years, I did my first amateur MMA thing. I was kind of training. Someone showed me jiu-jitsu, and so I was like, okay, this is freaking cool. And so I started doing jiu-jitsu around that time. And but people who had never trained in wrestling were like fucking me up, and I was just like, this is weird. So I got into it that way, and went to a couple local tournaments. But then, I was trying really hard to get in the Marine Corps, but I had torn my pec my senior year of college. I actually was competing at regionals and nationals with the torn pec because I got it fixed afterwards. But I had to get a medical waiver and all that stuff. It took me 2 years to get into the Marine Corps because of that. Got into the Marine Corps, and it was about a year of training before I could really, and I was able to do jiu-jitsu with that year of training in the Marine Corps. And then once I hit the fleet as an officer, I had a lot more liberty and freedom to get onto the wrestling team. And I just met the right people. My battalion commander was a black belt, and he's one of my biggest supporters now. He's just one of the people that I know I joined the Marine Corps to meet and everything. And so he just kind of sent me to the wrestling team. He was the big reason why I was able to do all that. And I got really close to Freeman that time and everything. So that's kind of the wrestling part of it.
Well, thank you. You definitely covered a lot of ground, so I got to kind of break this up. My man told me several chapters of the story, and I have bookmarks in a couple of those little placements on the pages. I guess the first one I have is this. Had your dad had any wrestling experience? Because if he was helping out, that's fine and that's cool. But sometimes parents, like my dad never played soccer, but all of a sudden here he is helping out with the soccer team. And it's like, do you know anything? It's like, nah, I don't know shit. So did your dad know anything about wrestling, or had he wrestled when he was growing up?
Yeah. First generation wrestler. He didn't have a whole lot of support from his family, from his parents. He did have some, but he didn't have a whole lot. And so just kind of like this savage of like, he just was like a, I just picture him like as a kid wanted to go wrestle or whatever in high school and growing up, but all he had was like the woods and like a tire swing, and that's him. And I remember telling stories about finding people in garages that would wrestle. You'd find the good people to wrestle, and like he would get around and like train. And then yeah, he took fourth in the state his sophomore year, and then he kind of got moved around by my grandparents. They went to Virginia, and they were in Lynchburg, and then he like kind of choked his senior year or whatever. I think he was kind of an angry person his junior year, didn't wrestle, and then he came back his senior year and like was ranked really high, and then just had a bad tournament, something like that. And so I just think like he always knew he had like this really natural ability to do it, and it's very true. Like that's where I get my kind of like, I don't even know what it is, maybe like essence. Like I know there's something wild about it. And but he got married, settled down, and that was the next option, was like coaching. And I'm just like really grateful because he kept us in the sport, and I got to be a second generation guy, and I had a lot more opportunities. And it's like wild. Like hopefully someday my kids will get to be like the third generation if I get to have them, and it's just like cool to know that story.
Well, think about this too, because maybe this is just part of it, but you're seeing it from the competitive success that you had, and obviously your dad's a part of that. But he also gave you the tools to be able to travel and compete worldwide. Like you showing up and doing those things is the foundation that he helped to give you. And what a lot of people don't have when they start in a sport, even if they have a first generation helping them, is a direction. So somebody who can help guide you and tell you like, hey, I've been injured. Hey, I've had a rough match when it was time when it counted, or all these things. Some parents wish they could give you that information. A lot of times parents are really stuck down to, well, you'll get them next time. And you're like, fuck, there's no next time. This was it. Like it's good to have somebody who can put things in perspective to you and keep you on the up and up, because that job he put in there had to keep you to the point where, as you mentioned, you might have been lost, but you found wrestling again. And when you and wrestling were able to meet up again, you going into the military, having that edge, not only I'm sure gave you direction, but a whole new challenge. And when you're the guy that's skilled and you're brought into somewhere at something, and people reinforce that with positive energy and say like, hey, we have a home for you here, you find an ability to latch what you're good at and develop it and nurture it even more. So what was that like, being able to compete and be a resource for the military? Because we've seen how prideful they get when they get to their sports. It's it's not just fun and games. It is very meaningful. When I used to work at the Tonight Show, we would have all the different divisions of the military. Everybody would come, Army, Navy, you name it. And we would make them have games where they'd be playing against each other. And we're just talking really silly games like open this can up, and whoever can open it up first gets to hand it off and do this. We had a Marine break his hand just to get the edge for his team. And I remember thinking like, did anybody tell them this is just for shits and giggles? But to them, it's like, it's company pride. So you don't want to be the fuck up on that. So for you, what did that feel like to then have that new home and that new beginning for you, sir?
Yeah, it was great. I have a lot of gratitude for my time in the Marine Corps and for the Marine Corps in certain ways, and that is it. It being that it gave me the opportunity to just become more aligned with what makes a meaningful life for me, and what makes life happy and worth pursuing. Those good things. And it is wild because what it does do is breed a type of individual that it's just hard to explain unless you're around them. Hard to explain also if you're not willing to step up and be around them, because they're just like, it's just a different energy. And I will say it's so large. There's so many different types, but I will say the good ones, which I do think are, it is a smaller percentage. Like in my, I mean, I think that they're all good. It's just good that they're serving. It's good that they're, willing to do that. But it's like the ones that I would like be around, the ones that was attracted to, the ones that were building something good, building leadership, building not this toxicity that is like so rampant inside of the military. It's like those select few, those types of individuals are just like they're so valuable. And it was funny because the wrestling team was kind of like just a coagulation of that energy of just those really good dudes. It was a lot of officers from the Naval Academy, and then a couple like two enlisted guys that made the world team. You got Ray Bunkers, and then Johnny Stefanowitz, and Johnny has just been like an older brother figure for me. Just someone that was just a brother figure, He's just someone that was always so encouraging, and he made the Olympics a few, while, I was like coming into it, but there is another side of it where it's like, yeah, you think that the Marine Corps, would have been really good to the wrestlers because they're so competitive. It looks so good. It's such a good recruiting tool, and all that's true, but their actions show differently. And I'm not a politics guy, and at least I don't like to talk about it. I am a politics guy. I do care, but I'm it's weird to talk about sometimes, but what was going on during COVID was so weird how it seemed like everything was backwards. And so we got the wrestling team pretty much cut funded. Coach Fekete pretty much was just coaching us, not getting paid for it. Me and Freeman, we were the only two. Like the team got disbanded, and we were the only two on Camp Lejeune that was really sticking around and training. We had Jamel Johnson was as well. He was in the area, but we all had full time jobs. Like I was a training officer for an entire battalion. I had 1,500 Marines that I was responsible for. So I'm like, luckily I had my battalion commander, like I told you. Him and I met through jiu-jitsu, and he just, kind of guarded me and helped me out. And like, I actually put him in a weird position because I didn't take the vaccine. But he never came down on me for that, and he just let me do my thing. And I did it all very like legally and paperwork and everything. So he just never, he just let me do my thing, but he still, and didn't never hold it over me, and just like let me, when there were opportunities, go to the Armed Forces Championship. Like me and Freeman were able to get on the Navy wrestling team, compete at the Armed Forces. We both took first. Like it's crazy. Like just like such a good experience. So well.
It is wild because there are repercussions to almost all of this. And I like to tell people there are certain things that happen that at the time you don't love. That at the time you're kind of going through something that you're like, this is unnecessarily harsh, or I don't like this. But at the same point, it does free you up to do other things, and that maybe you have to go through those crazy circumstances to find it. It just never feels good. Like when somebody goes, oh, it all happens for a reason. I'm like, if you're in it, you go, what the fuck's the reason? When do I know? And so for you, it does seem like now that we're here, part of the reason is maybe you were meant to find greater success now in jiu-jitsu, because to me, you bring a nice hybrid style of, I like the wrestling, I like the aggression, but you're very much in the strong development process of creating a game that I think is exciting for audiences to watch. And that's really the big key that we're trying to do. As a TV person, I need people who can put out and perform. Like I need people who can make things exciting. There's nothing worse than when somebody has a not great match. Not saying they won, not saying they lost, but then they come over, they're like, how was the match? And I go, it was on time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have anything for you because I can provide the opportunity, but it's up to everybody to like take that opportunity, take those reins, and like make it entertaining. So, from start to finish, you've been able to do that. And I think that's really, really cool. And, I see you competing at ADCC Open. I see you competing, right over here. It looks like you have another match already lined up in the not too far distant future. So you're doing the hard work of those next steps. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a specific question. This is a little more grappling than it is wrestling, unfortunately. Do you remember your first class? Because I know you mentioned that you were in there and you were kind of getting handled by some people who just do jiu-jitsu. This is a very similar story to most people. but like,
Yeah.
what vividly do you remember about your first
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu class?
I'm just gonna say a name, Kyle Beevelheimer. This motherfucker he's a dad of three, so he's got 3x dad strength. He just didn't do any wrestling and like found jujitsu probably back in like 2015, and he's just one of those guys. Is so smart. He just downloaded all the information from anything that he could online, just like downloaded it all, and then just also is like a fitness freak, and so he's just like ripped and but like doesn't train, never trained with the team or anything. And then he starts training in Traverse City, probably right around the same time that I kind of was getting into it. And I just thought I would tool on this guy because I had so much wrestling, but he just would always mess me up. He was like yeah, he would just get to my legs and find a way to get to my legs, and he would just mess me up, mess me up. It's like wild to get tooled by him. We're like best friends now. It's like he's the one who gets my raw milk for me and stuff. He's just like a farmer. He just like does everything. He's just the dude, and but no one would know about him. He's just a straight up killer, and he's just doing his life with his three kids and just like raising them well, and like just nobody knows about him. Sake. So that was my first experience was Kyle, going to a gym up here in Traverse City that was like pretty small at the time. It was just like a few people. So
The other question I like to ask in conjunction with that one is, when did you fall in love with grappling? Because think of it like this: falling in love with jiu-jitsu requires you to do more than just doing it as a hobby. So what compelled you to go the extra mile to not just compete on a smaller scene, but to try and go for these bigger opportunities and to maybe do that in place of some other things that I'm sure that could have fallen on your plate? So what about jiu-jitsu spoke to you, and when was that made it so that you actually are going to do it as more than just a hobby?
it's a really good question. It's a really good question. Trying to think when the flip really like when it switched, because like it was just so nice to have a community to go to on like go to open mats on the weekend after after a long week of Marine Corps stuff, and like get to go to a couple practices after work, and just have like people to go to, and then also just like can get that energy out. um I think probably when I went to Jiu-Jitsu Con in 2021, I won Jiu-Jitsu Con at Blue Belt. It was like my first kind of big trip. I took leave for it, and I planned it out. I went out like 4 or 5 days early. My black belt professor, Fresden Pashao, is out there in Las Vegas. So I like, I just like, it was all, expenses, just like registration fees, Airbnbs, Ubers, all that stuff. So I just, I did the thing, and I was professional about it, and I was cutting weight for it, and I just felt really, really good and locked in, and trained with Fredson the week leading up, met a lot of cool people that I'm close with now, and competed at Jiu-Jitsu Con 2 days in a row. I took second in the gi the first day, and it kind of blew me away. And I actually like gi the most. It's most fun. Um, and so I was like, cool, cool. And then, I had a really good performance in the no-gi division. And the dude I beat in the finals is one of the cameramen, steady cam for like Daisy Fresh, and he's all with the Daisy Fresh guys. His name's Matthias, and so we're tight now and good friends. I've seen him at so many ADCCs, and he jokes now because I'm just like 20 pounds heavier than him. And at the time, I think I cut to like 182, I think was the weight class. So just like, yeah, it was just all came together really well. Took first. And I think like having Freds in there, having like a group of people there, and just like, yeah, I think that was like where I was like, okay, like jujitsu can happen. It's like a cross between wrestling, it's just kind of this whole thing. So,
I feel
yeah.
that. And I have to tell you, you're that annoying type of weight, because I look at you and I think, all right, he's nowhere near my division, so we're good here. And then you say things like, "Oh, I cut down to 182," and I'm like, "Whoa, easy there, Junior. You need to back up a little bit, because on a right now, Not saying it's where I fall at, but I'm like, I'm so glad that we are divided by a long amount of age and time and space, because there are some people that I look at that are allegedly my weight that I go, what are we doing here? Like, dude, I'm a $180 right now. What? No, I need to get out of this. And my friends will tell me, they're like, why don't you just cut weight? And I was like, why don't you just stop eating for me? Shut the fuck up, dude. This is the weight. When you get to a certain age, this is just what you do. You don't do the weight cuts. I'm not about that life. So, yeah, you just got to
Yeah.
deal with people like you who just magically show up in your division and go, yeah, okay. All right. Sounds fun.
That's awesome.
Well, let's do this, dude. I know we have gone a little bit longer, but I wanted to give you time to speak on all the things you did, not only to give you the right props for all of the greatness that you were able to do for us at Subversiv, but there were important issues that I did want to talk about with you that I thought you very nicely touched upon, and I appreciate that. But of course, I also wanted to touch on your origin story. But I like to always tell people we're putting a pin in this chapter of the book, and obviously you and I will record a separate segment here for the other breakdown of your match. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to go ahead and shout out any sponsors, any teammates that you wanted to thank that helped you put on such a great performance at Subversiv XI. So I'm going to turn the camera to you. It is all on you, sir. Take it easy.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just kind of start at the beginning. So Torin, I've already mentioned him. It's a big factor in this preparation. I got so many like boys to shout out, so I'll just like maybe love you guys. You know who you are. I will say Johnny Slicks, Sleeping Bear Farms, and DD214 have been like got my back for the last little bit, and they're companies that I really align with. DD214 being a sportswear company that has just kind of been following me since I was in the Marine Corps, and actually the match that I have on the 27th with Assembly in Detroit, a black belt from Assembly, is another DD214 guy, so that's kind of cool. We just kind of like both rep that, and so I'm just like wondering maybe if he's like a veteran or what, but I'm excited to kind of get to know him and what he's about. But yeah, DD214, and then Johnny Slicks is a beard grooming company. Well, they have a lot of stuff. They have organic soaps, but it's all just like really high quality organic made. Like I love their beard pomade that I got right here, and then they'll just like, yeah, they were out at the Las Vegas Open sponsoring ADCC. They just were giving me a lot of just really good love, and that's run by Johnny's a Marine and Nick Kamalatsus is a Marine. So they all get it, and they're out on the East Coast where I was stationed, so I get to see them in person probably pretty often, probably like once a year at least. It's gonna be how it's gonna be, and then you got Sleeping Bear Farms that has like hooked me up with. I showed you this offline, but my 12-pound bucket of honey. So I go through one of those like in a month. Well, between me and Sean, my roommate, like we go through one of those like a month, and then I was drinking their mead tonight. It's kind of like celebrating. They got a really good mead. It's a Royal Reserve. So these guys are local, but they're actually everywhere. I found them in North Carolina. They're just really high quality, and they just really dope people. So shout them all out. But other than that, like if my Benzie Central Wrestler guys are listening, they're gonna think this is really cool. So shout out to them, and we're gonna crush it this year. We were state semifinalists last year, so got a lot of studs coming back, and that's where I'll be putting my attention. A lot of this winter is just like developing them, and yeah, man, that's pretty much it. Shout out, Mom. Love you.
Oh, look at that. See, that's a good son. I'll say that. But I want to point this out though. See this photo right here? You need to talk to whoever this photographer is, because this photographer shooting you like this, my friend, worth the weight in gold. You look like Jason Kelsey if he got the Marvel team that put him into shape for a movie here, bud. Because I look at this and I'm just like, yo, that's a great photo. So as a photographer, I'm like, yeah, that would make me a lot of money.
Jason Kelsey does look like me. You're right. Dude, Dead Like Dan is his name on Instagram, and he just showed up at the U.S. Open with me and Taylor, my roommate from college. He was the heavyweight at Wheaton. Him and I are still. He's like one of the strongest men in the world. Like he does strongman and stuff like that. He's just a freak. So he's like my strength coach, and he was the one that was coaching me that day at the U.S. Open last December. Funny story: I was literally in the corner with Jake Varner, which is an Olympic champ, and one of his guys. So I wrestled the Penn State guy. He beat me, but I also took out his ankle somehow. Like he literally couldn't compete the rest of the day, so it was just kind of like a draw, maybe. But yeah, Jake Varner. But anyways, yeah, Dan took that picture and he showed us later. I'm just like, bro, what are you? How? It's just like this. Yeah, his peg leg, he's got a prosthetic, and just hauling around. He's just a super fucking cool guy, and just yeah.
That's what's up. Well, sir, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a pin on this conversation, you and I, in a few seconds. We're going to tape the other one, but I'm going to close this up. My thanks to you for not only being great with this interview, but also for giving us a great show, man. It was so much fun getting to talk with you just for a few seconds. You know, I was wiped by the time I saw you that night on Sunday. I was exhausted. I had no food in me. My boy Tim, who was talking to you, his job was to take me to go eat. He was literally forcing me to come eat because I had not eaten for the night. And he's like, hey, man, we got to go to tacos. We got to go. I was like, yeah. And I hear you. And then I talked to you. And he's just looking at me like, we got to go. And I'm like, you're the one that's getting me to talk to somebody who's cool. Like, I'm going to talk to this dude for 5 minutes. The tacos can fucking wait. And so I just was like, I want to thank you. You had a cool walkout. You seemed awesome. It was really fun. You were telling us about the experience. And I felt like it was time well spent. So I got to tell you, man, the highest compliment I can give somebody is I delayed having tacos to talk to you. And that I knew right then and there that we would do this interview. And you so graciously made the time in your schedule. So I appreciate that and all the hard work that you put in, my man.
Good origin story for us, bro.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the first of many to come. So take a seat. I'll be right back. I'm just going to close this off and then we'll do our next thing. So our thank you so much, Jared, for your time, sir. All right, guys, here's what we're doing. Just as a couple quick reminders, like, comment, subscribe. If you have no idea what you want to comment on, here is your prompt. It's very easy. Tell us, how often are you having honey? Because I'll tell you this much. As a guy who talks a lot, the honey is what saves this voice, and it's probably coming in handy. I think you've actually seen me on the show take just direct shots of honey when shit has gotten bad. And even sometimes I don't put it on camera, but you've for sure seen me do that. So tell us how often you have it and where you get yours from, because my man literally has a jar, like not even a jar, like that is a vat. Like, look at this. Just so you get an idea. Look at this man. Like, this is the shit that you get your laundry detergent in. Like, it is that much honey. And my man literally told us during the interview, he was like, oh, that'll be gone in like a week and change. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking of all the stuff I do have with honey. I don't think I could put a dent in that, at least for a month. But props to him and props to you guys. Remember, like, comment, subscribe. Additionally, be sure to follow us, patreon.com/grappling hour. See our interviews 30 days before anybody else and the extra special bonus content that is not available anywhere else, including a tape study we're about to do for this man's incredible finish. So do that. Find us on Apple Podcasts, rate and review on there, and then also rate and review on Spotify. It is at Grappling Hour, and also you can find us on the Discord. Ladies and gents, that's going to do it for us here at the Grappling Hour. Thank you so much for watching along. It's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.